Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalam ala nabiyyuna. Uh, I want to welcome everybody, those of our audience and participants, to the 11th webinar series here at CIGA. This panel titled on Kashmir, Evaluating a Way Forward. We are celebrating the February 5th, which is International Kashmiri Day here at CIGA. We thought we would commemorate it by bringing together a very distinguished panel to discuss the pressing issues facing our brothers in Kashmir and the very volatile situation on the ground. Let me start by saying a few words about CIGA and what we try to do at CIGA. CIGA is the Center for Islam and Global Affairs, housed at Istanbul's Fatih Zaim University. CIGA was formed as an advanced research institute in international affairs and geopolitics in order to take the Muslim world as a category of analysis from which we would try to understand the shifting international problems and challenges with keeping the Muslim world as the center of our focus. Over the course of the year, we do a number of international conferences, book reviews, and one of our main features is the seminar series, where we invite specialists on a certain field to speak about pertinent issues that are facing the Muslim Ummah. Today we have with us a very, very distinguished and honorable set of participants. I'd like to introduce them one by one. Before I get into the introductions, let me remind all of those who are participating that you can access this seminar online. We have it on Facebook Live. You can go to www.facebook.com/CIGA Istanbul/live. You'll be able to watch it live. When we begin, we will also invite questions from participants, which we will try to put on the table for all of us. Okay, first and foremost, we have with us His Excellency Mr. Sardar Masood, currently serving as the 27th President of Jammu and Kashmir, a position he assumed on the 25th August 2015. He is a career diplomat who represents Pakistan at the United Nations, China, the Netherlands, and organizations. Of his current position, serves as Director General of the Institute for Strategic Studies in Istanbul. We have Her Excellency Ms. Andleeb Abbas, who is a member of the Pakistani National Assembly, where she also serves as a parliamentary secretary for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She's also a member of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party. Ms. Abbas is also a leadership guru and is involved in the field of consulting, organizing, training, and coaching for the past 2 decades. She is a former strategic advisor and consultant to the World Bank, UNDP, Asian Development Bank, and she is a visiting faculty member at a number of universities. From Europe, we have Dr. Phillip Bennion. He is a former member of the European Union Parliament from the United Kingdom and currently serves as Vice Chair of the Human Rights Committee at Liberal International. He has been actively engaged with Kashmiri diaspora in the country and served as a spokesman for the new group on South Asia and an active member of the UK Parliament's Friends of Kashmir. He was also nominated as a user activist. He nominated the user activist Ilham Tohti for the Sakharov Prize and led the successful campaign to win the award. Ambassador Abdul Basit is also joining us. He is a career diplomat who represented Pakistan at a very important world capital such as Moscow, New York, Moscow, Washington, D.C., and Berlin. He served as High Commissioner in India at a critical time soon after the rise of the Hindu nationalist BJP government post 2014. He also served as a spokesman at Pakistan's Foreign Ministry in Islamabad. He has written a well-received book, Hostility, The Diary of a Diplomat, which reflects on India, Pakistan, and relations in Kashmir. And I think we expect it to come into publication very soon. First, I would like to give the floor to all of our participants. We'll open up with 3 minutes opening statements by everybody in order to kind of take a stock of where we are right now with the Kashmir situation, how you address the situation from the standpoint of international relations and your assessment of the situation. Thereafter, we will go into a question and answer session. I will moderate by funneling questions from the audience and also some of the topics and themes that we had thought were important. And then we will close the thing. So without ado, I give the floor to Mr. Sardar Masood to have his opening remarks.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon and good evening and assalamu alaikum. I'll speak for 5 minutes and no more because I'll have to leave after making these opening remarks. So I beg your pardon for that. Thank you so much, Dr. Sami Al-Arian, for hosting this event. CIGA and Sabahattin Zaim University, under your leadership, have focused sharply on Kashmir and Palestine, and we are grateful to you for that. I must say that you are an influential voice in Turkey, Islamic world, and of course in Pakistan. Let me also thank Turkish people and Turkish government, especially President Rajab Tayyip Erdogan, for the strong and steadfast support you extended to Pakistan and Jammu and Kashmir. We are beholden to you. Let me also warmly greet Ms. Andleeb Abbas, Dr. Phillip Bennion, and Ambassador Abdul Basit, all of them passionate advocates for the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Let me raise some key points. As we speak, genocide is taking place in Kashmir. Every effort should be made to put this genocide on center stage and put it on the global agenda. The manifestations of this genocide are killings, blindings, massacres, staged encounters, rapes, arbitrary arrests, and no due process in the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Thousands of young men are in concentration camps who are being tortured and brainwashed there. In the past 7 months, millions of Hindus have been illegally transferred from India and illegally settled in the occupied territory in order to change demography of the state for all times to come. Millions more are preparing to move into the occupied territory in the coming months and years. Such systematic transplantation of population has no precedent in the history of occupation, colonial rule, and warfare. Kashmiri land is being robbed. All Kashmiri land is up for grabs for illegal settlements by non-native occupation authorities and 900,000 occupation armed forces which are deployed there. Kashmiris are besieged in their own homeland, where foreign outside marauders are preying on local, indigenous, and helpless population. The predators are committing crimes against humanity, against Kashmiri Muslims, who are cut off from the rest of the world. The occupied territory is the worst Islamophobic hotspot in the world. People are being annihilated because they are Muslims, their religious identity and their aspiration for freedom have become their bane, their curse. The Indian occupied territory today is the worst axis of Indian state-sponsored terrorism or state-sponsored terrorism anywhere in the world that kills and robs unarmed, non-combatant civilians, some 14 million of them. Who is doing all this? It is the violent extremist BJP RSS regime who, while pursuing a hate-driven doctrine called Hindutva, think Muslims are lesser human beings who deserve elimination and a pogrom. Such appeals have not made a dent in the past, but I want to make a few appeals through the platform of Turkey today. Hold India and Indian regime accountable and bring the Indian genocidaires to justice. The United Nations is not fulfilling its responsibilities. Let's therefore turn Kashmir movement into an international civil rights movement in order to put pressure on multilateral forums to move on Kashmir to take decisions. Let's also try to create a parallel alternative multilateral ecosystem that can get justice for the people who've been denied justice under the existing forums because of realpolitik. The Spahatin Zion University and CIGA can do a lot to construct and broadcast the true narrative of Kashmir. Let's boycott Indian products, deny investments to India, and impose sanctions on India. I would say, this is my appeal to the international community, don't sell guns to India because they kill Kashmiris. These guns kill Kashmiris. Indian regime continues to commit crimes in the occupied territory under the thick pall of deception. Let's tear down that facade and let's persuade other nations in the world to stop appeasing India because of their narrow and I would say myopic strategic and economic interests. I appeal to Turkey to activate its humanitarian diplomacy on Kashmir and establish a humanitarian corridor for Kashmiris in the occupied territory. Let's also try to set up peace tables for dialogue and diplomacy to resolve the Kashmir dispute and to give the right to self-determination to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And we should ask India assertively to show up at these tables. And I would say, no place better than Istanbul for such an engagement. I thank you.
Yeah. We lost the host.
Is always there. You're muted, always.
Okay, thank you very much. We had a little technical difficulty there. Your Excellency, this is Azad. Thank you for your opening comments and setting the tone for this discussion. I'm sorry to hear that you will have to leave before the end of the session. Nevertheless, we are honored that you were able to come and join and kick off this discussion. I will pass the floor to Ms. Andleeb Abbas. If you could say a few words by way of introduction and by framing the narrative as we move forward. The floor is yours.
So Center for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul Sabahattin Zam University, Excellencies, Honorable President and distinguished guests, good evening and Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for inviting me to this August forum and giving us the opportunity to be talking and discussing about a very important topic, and that is Kashmir. Kashmir is a tragedy unlimited, and it has become a point where it's really becoming difficult for even words to express what they're going through. 550 days of lockdown, 73 years of oppression. Children, elders, families, women, men under constant siege, the most militarized area in the world, and 550 days of lockdown. We've all gone through a lockdown recently, and even 60 days of lockdown, the world has exploded. It is a lockdown of talking to your own relatives. It's a lockdown of going out and studying. It's a lockdown of living freely, thinking freely, eating freely, moving freely. It is a lockdown of all rights that make you human. So, where are we? In the midst of a COVID, where every nation is so absorbed about, how to take care of yourself and your people and save ourselves, Kashmiris have become a priority which many nations have sort of shelved. And that is why the role of Turkey, the role of China, the role of so many other countries internationally is so important. And that is why forums like these are so crucial to keep this topic in the forefront of the world. I would be just taking about 3 different angles to this discussion. First is political. India has traditionally used and abused Kashmir to create a farce of its gruesome oppression in Kashmir and across the border. For years, India has politically said Kashmir is being torturized by militancy from Pakistan. And India has been, through its RSS organization in the last 5-6 years, heightening up this whole atmosphere to a level where they try to make a whole game of Pakistan being exporting the terror and India being the recipient of it. Well, the good news is that India has started exposing itself, and Pakistan and Turkey and many others have took a stand on exposing that India, especially Modi, Prime Minister Modi's government, is a government which is deliberately, intentionally, and behaviorally, politically, legally trying to decimate the humanity of the most sieged and entrapped and jailed group of people in the world. Maybe history has never seen. I mean, even animals cannot be termed as being locked down as Kashmiris have. Animals have more rights. We had an elephant in Pakistan who was brought from some other country, and the whole world was talking about that it's lonely, and so it was taken back to its family in Cambodia. So if we are so aware as a world about one forlorn elephant, what about the 22 million people in Kashmir? And so there is that angle of the political angle where we have to see that how countries can really get together as a group and raise more voices, because we've seen that in the last 4 years, a concerted effort by Pakistan and some countries have been made to raise a voice. And now people in European Union, people in, US Congress are talking about this, something which had never been done. 2 United Nations meetings have held, which were not done for the last 50 years. Is that enough? No. But Is it a beginning? Yes. So politically, we stand to raise a voice in the Committee of Nations through various means, through talking to the right people in the right lobbies, through our diplomacy, soft, hard, whatever, we need to raise that voice over there. Legally, there is a big problem because India has obviously abrogated Article 370 and 35A as a citizen amendment also. And so there is this debate that legally should we go into the international court. I'm not a legal expert, and so some of you who are more legally bound can probably comment on it. But what I feel is that the demographic infiltration and pollution that India is doing over there, because remember 68% of Kashmir is Muslims and 22% is Hindus. Now they're trying to do that demographic shift because they're now allowing Indians to marry and become citizens in Kashmir. So over a period of time, recently they've also postponed their census. They want to have the census in 2026 because they feel that by 2026, a large proportion of Indians will not be Kashmiris, but be Hindus and Indians who are coming in and forcing themselves on Kashmir, taking away the rights of Kashmiris. But the most important part, and that's probably my little bit of expertise also, is the marketing part, the social media part. You've seen the Indian slick lobbies, 735 websites, layer upon layer of fake websites, social media, Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, portals have been established all over the world by India to run a propaganda of painting Pakistan as a villain, painting Pakistan as the problem in the world. And nobody has bothered to really look into and sift into the truth. Now, the Disinformation Lab has exposed them and has told that even, dead professors from Harvard who no longer exist are being used to endorse their opinions. So this is the time, I think, that we can run a social movement all across the world in raising the slogan of Kashmiri Lives Matter. Because the farmers' protests have brought light to India. There are celebrities talking about it. There are activists talking about it. And we need to have the civil society, the activists, the lobbyists, the politicians, the citizens, the whole world talking about it through social media, through their own media, in such a way that this noise and voice becomes too loud for the world to ignore and for the UN to take a strict action and give the Kashmiris their right of self-determination back. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The next opening statement I would like to give to Dr. Phillip Bennion. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, I'm obviously speaking as a European and as a British subject, and from an ethnic background which is far away from Kashmir. But I came into contact with this issue many years ago because as a member of the European Parliament, representing the West Midlands in the United Kingdom, this is a region which includes the city of Birmingham, which has a huge Kashmiri diaspora. So I was drawn into this in the initial stages, and very, very quickly I came to the conclusion that the repeated calls for the plebiscite, the 1947 promised plebiscite, was getting nowhere. I heard the same speeches year after year after year at the same events, And I thought, well, we've got to try to find at least a parallel path. And I have to say that the ideas that the two previous speakers have come up with, which is to focus on human rights and focus on a social media popular movement, I think it is absolutely right. I think that the United Nations has not been functional enough to actually enforce the former resolutions, and I don't think it will become so. So I think we have to look at a different approach. Now, the second point I made to my Kashmiri diaspora colleagues, a lot of them are from my own political party that I work with very, very closely. I pointed out that they also needed a more uniform message and one that that was followed by the entire community. We had the problem, and we still have this problem to a certain extent, although I think we're getting over it, is that the movement itself was split between those who wanted to join, wanted the whole of Kashmir to join Pakistan, and those who wanted the whole of Kashmir to be independent of both India and Pakistan. These two groupings were squabbling with each other. And when you've got that sort of situation, you rarely actually win the day. So I said that they must come together, forget about the final outcome, and move together on those things that they agree with, that they agree on. I've also pointed out to them how strong the India lobby is. I know this from my experiences in the European Parliament, where the Indian lobbyists would have a very, very very consistent message, and they would be in every single MEP's office. And I'm sure they're the same in the United States, and the same with the British government. That they're a very, very well organized lobbying organization. They have, whereas the Kashmiri one, I know, I mean, there has been probably 30 or 40 different Kashmiri organizations here in the UK that I've actually been invited to speak with. So the other message I've given them, they have to get together. They have to get together and employ very professional lobbyists who absolutely know what they're doing, and deliver consistent messages in the capitals and in Brussels. Because without a consistent message and one that is well resourced in terms of lobbying power, again, you're likely to lose the arguments even when you're right. Now, for going forward, I do believe that there is an opportunity, and I've mentioned this in 2 or 3 previous events over the last month or two, with the Biden administration taking charge in the United States, and the Biden administration has made it very, very clear that it would like to come to a conclusion on the Kashmiri issue. That this is an opportunity, but it's also a threat, because basically the Biden administration and Europe and the British and the Australians and the Canadians are all having problems with China. And the problems that they're having with China is that China is very, very intent on becoming the school bully. It is pushing its weight around and is actually a threat to liberal democracy worldwide. Now, there is a very big caucus of opinion now that says that we need to be getting together to face down China and take a much stronger line, not against the Chinese people, but against the Chinese trying to push the rest of the world around. And there is a key element in this is India. And the reason why India is a key element is it has its own arguments with China, but also it is seen by the democratic West as still as a democracy, even though I have said that they have been veering towards fascism under this current government. If you saw my last speech in the European Parliament, yes, I said we should be considering sanctions, but the United Nations is unlikely to go far. And so this new alliance against China, there is a leverage possibility here, because basically if we can convince the Americans that they can enlist India into this club, if you like, but on the basis that they come to the table over Kashmir, we have got to get India to the table. This has been the problem since this problem began, is that India will not talk, and this is why it cannot be a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, because one of the two parties won't come to the table. So we have got some leverage at the moment. We need to use it. We need to use every economic tool we can to prize India towards the table, towards talking about this issue, and we also need to take account that there's actually quite a lot of opposition to Modi's approach to Kashmir in India itself now. So we need to take the opportunities, but we need to be organised, and the Kashmir lobby needs to be unified. If we can do all of that, then we can at least possibly get India to the table to talk about this, and to put pressure on to try to in the first instance we have to raise the lockdown, and in the second instance we have to restore autonomy, even though the form of autonomy that Kashmir had was not necessarily recognised by a lot of Kashmiris. I think in terms of a roadmap, we have to go down these routes. Now, at the end of the process, we obviously want to see Kashmir with at least a form of self-determination, and that must be the end point. But without the roadmap, India will not go to the end of that process at the first instance. We need to get India to the table. We need to use every bit of leverage we have to get them there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bennion. Ambassador Abdul Basit, your opening remarks, please.
Thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Actually, everything has already been said by the previous speakers. The only 2-3 points I would like to make. First, the irony of the matter is that India is not comprehending the gravity of the situation. And in its hubristic attitude towards Kashmir, as well as towards Pakistan, it is further complicating the entire situation. And as the situation is getting increasingly vexed, the room or the space for bilateralism is also decreasing and diminishing. The previous honorable speaker very rightly pointed out that we need to bring India to the negotiating table. But Pakistan and India have been talking to each other, but without achieving much, especially when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir dispute. India actually has been using and has used bilateral talks to bring in other peripheral issues rather than engaging with Pakistan in a constructive and meaningful manner to explore possibilities for resolving this long-standing dispute between the two countries. So in my humble opinion, 2 things are required. One is that Kashmiris need to build pressure from within on India, and that will come with whatever means are required, and Kashmiris know how to do that. Secondly, I think it is also the responsibility of the international community to see as to how there can be some kind of a mediation between Pakistan and India. Because without international pressure, without involvement of a third party, whether it is the UN or any other country, especially the US, I do not see any possibility of India engaging with Pakistan or engaging on the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. And that to me is important. Thirdly, I think a point has been made earlier as well that we need to unify Kashmiri and Pakistani diaspora because, for example, in the UK, we have close to 1.5 million Pakistanis and Kashmiris, and they are unfortunately divided along political lines, political, ethnic, and linguistic lines. So that we need to come up with some kind of a strategy as to how we can mobilize and channelize their energies towards putting pressure on the international community. We also need to involve civil society organizations around the world, advocacy groups across the globe. So it has to be done in a systematic and in a methodical manner. But at the end of the day, I think it is important for the international community to understand that so long as the Kashmir dispute is there, there cannot be peace in South Asia. There can't be peace in Afghanistan. There can't be peace between Pakistan and India. And then the region itself cannot take off economically. Because South Asia continues to be the least integrated, economically speaking, the regions in the world. And we all know that how India has been using Afghanistan to destabilize Pakistan. So the level of the chasm which exists between Pakistan and India cannot be bridged unless there is a fair solution to the Jammu and Kashmir dispute that is in tandem or in kilter with the political aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It is as simple as that. And India also needs to realize that if it were to fulfill its global, regional, and global aspirations, it has to resolve the issue, resolve this dispute. Without that, even India cannot realize its full potential. So in my view, the situation remains very, very complex, and it has become more complex after the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A. Hence, we need to mobilize Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir, as well as living abroad, and hence also through civil society organizations and advocacy groups, and seek and involve the international community to push India towards finding a tenable and fair solution to the dispute. So with these remarks, I will thank CIGA for inviting us and holding and hosting this webinar. Let's hope that we will have a good and interesting question answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Basit. Your insights on the issue are most welcome. I want to remind everybody participating that on the chat forum, we're live on Facebook, and we have a number of members in the Zoom call. Anybody who would like to ask a question, you're more than welcome to write your questions and address them to the participants. I will now open we will begin our question and answer session. And let me remind the participants that for the sake of time and having everybody participate, that they try to keep their answers as brief and concise as possible. And with that, I want to first, while we have the president on the line, is he still here? Or I'm not sure if the president is still here. However, I wanted to address it to our Ms. Andleeb Abbas, as she is also the current member of the current ruling party. The first question is to her. Recently, the president, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, had made a very moving speech at Kotli, where he seemed to have given us indication that Pakistan's position may be shifting in response to the current circumstances. He mentioned the issue of independence. So, does this mean that Pakistan has moved from its position from calling Kashmir the jugular vein and now may be ready to see it cede from the territory? What is the current position? Can you give us some clarity on that issue?
So thank you. I think Pakistan's position is very clear, and it has been and it will be that we want the Kashmiris to have the right of self-determination as per the UN rules. And the right of self-determination is the right for them to choose for themselves. And that position remains the same position throughout. It has not changed. We are for the freedom of Kashmiris. We are working towards giving the Kashmiris their rights. And we are also abiding by the UN resolutions, the UN Charter, which gives them the right for plebiscite, which gives them the right for self-determination and for choosing their own direction.
Thank you very much. I want to remind everybody that I'm directing these questions at people who I think might be the most qualified to speak on the matter. But this is an open discussion, so all the participants who are on, you can unmute your mic, and if there's anything you would like to contribute, you can contribute.
Yeah, can I on that same issue? Certainly, every time that I have met with Pakistani politicians, both in Pakistan and in Brussels, that is the message that has always been the official message that they have given to us, whether they've been from the People's Party, from PTI, from PMLN. The official line of all the major political parties in Pakistan is that basically they would abide by the results of a referendum in Kashmir, and if it was for independence, they would go along with it. Now, many people suspect that they have taken that line on the basis of an expectation that they would get a vote to join Pakistan. Now, I think that actually it's very, very uncertain to which way it would go. But when it comes down to trying to engage India, of course, it's that danger of a move of Kashmir from Indian territory to Pakistani territory that really is really makes India extremely resistant to come to the table. So this is why I think a negotiated settlement may well actually have to be the way. I would never take the demand for the plebiscite away, because it has the resonance of having the resolutions at the United Nations behind it. So it is a very, very strong tool. But when it comes down to it, realpolitik might mean that there has to be some form of negotiated settlement. But yeah, I will actually back up what the minister just said, in that that has always been consistently the position of all of the Pakistani politicians that I have met and the ambassadors that I have met, and they have never wavered from that position. I have heard other views, of course, from civil servants and senior civil servants at that, but it's the politicians that really call the tune in the final reckoning. So yeah, I can back that up.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Abdul, would you like to add something on this, or?
No, I think our position is very clear, and it is embedded in UN resolutions, which provides for a plebiscite to determine whether Kashmiris would like to join Pakistan and India or India. Once they decide either in favor of India or Pakistan, or if they decide in favor of Pakistan, then we have an article 257 in Pakistan Constitution. Then it would be for Kashmiris and for Pakistan to decide what kind of relationship they will have. So Pakistan's position has always been, we have been very consistent. And since we strongly believe in the right to self-determination for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and all over the world for that matter, it has been our principled stance, whether it is for Kashmiris or for Palestinians or for people anywhere in the world under foreign occupation. So our position has been very, very consistent.
You raised a good point about the constitutional relationship between Islamabad and Azad, Jammu and Kashmir, and maybe even the coming relationship. If you could add a few words about what is the standing legal relationship between Azad, Jammu and Kashmir and the Republic of Pakistan.
I'm not sure because, in Pakistan, there are two different views about the interpretation of Article 257. If you ask for my view, I would suggest that it is after the people of Jammu and Kashmir decide to accede to Pakistan, then we would enter into talks with the people or with the representatives of the people in order to determine what kind of a relationship they want, whether they want a kind of relationship which existed between occupied Jammu and Kashmir and New Delhi, which stemmed from the instrument of accession, so-called instrument of accession, which Maharaja Hari Singh signed, or the state of Jammu and Kashmir would like to become a fifth province of Pakistan, what kind of an autonomy they would like to have. So we would leave these questions to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, to the state of Jammu and Kashmir to decide. So it would be for them to decide. So there is nothing for negotiations. We would leave to their discretion. Whatever they want, we would accept that. The government of Pakistan would readily accept whatever they ask for once they accede to Pakistan. But on the other hand, some people are of the view that this Article 257 also allows the option for independent Kashmir. So here I think we need some clarity. Perhaps this article may be referred to the Supreme Court of Pakistan for interpretation. I do not know. After accession, perhaps another referendum may be held in Jammu and Kashmir, whether they want total independent Kashmir, if that is the case. So these little ambiguities would require to be removed. But at this stage, I think this discussion may not be very fruitful. Important is at this point to focus on implementing the UN resolution, bringing the Indian government to the negotiating table, and then if there is another possible settlement which is acceptable to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, so be it. And this is I'm saying in my private capacity because officially Pakistan is committed to UN resolutions, but we have seen in the past during Musharraf's time there were back channel diplomacy which was discussing his 4-point formula, which was out of the box solution. So there are many, formulas. There was Dixon-Owen formula, Chenab formula, McNaughton formula. There were so many proposals to resolve the problem. But at this stage, I think important is that India should first accept that there is a dispute which needs to be resolved peacefully through negotiations. And that, unfortunately, is not happening.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Phillip Bennion, you had raised the issue of China as being, we're sitting at a very strange position between the geopolitical rivalry that is unfolding between China and India. I mean, it's more of a, what I should say, a hopeful rivalry amongst outsiders that India might step up to fill the vacuum of power vacuum in Asia. But here, there's the critical role of the UK is very important. I mean, we saw that Hong Kong was a colony of Britain until 1997. And last year, aggressions by the Chinese state against Hong Kong were under great scrutiny by the UK and a lot of liberal democratic governments around the world. However, we fail to see such commitments to the principles of human rights and freedom from the UK when it came to Indian actions in Kashmir. What is your analysis of what might be the lack of support on the Kashmiri issue?
Well, again, in this country, in the UK, there has been quite a lot. There is quite a lot of public support for the Kashmiris, but when it comes down to the political parties, again, the Indian diaspora is very powerful, and so you tend to find that the UK political parties, as a get-out, go back to this idea that it's a bilateral issue because I don't want to take sides between the Kashmiri diaspora and the Indian diaspora. And of course, the Indian diaspora is a lot more wealthy than the Kashmiri diaspora. So, and they are in more positions of power. In terms of representation, that isn't the case. There are an awful lot of Kashmiri politicians who are at parliamentary level, probably more than there are from the Hindu communities, but the level to which they rise, you tend to find that the Indian, particularly the Hindu Indians, have risen to a very, very powerful positions in British society and in the political parties. So it's very difficult for a political party to actually be very definite in terms of the way it supports a resolution to this problem, because to do the right thing, it has to upset the India lobby, and they're all very, very afraid of doing that. And I think particularly the Conservatives these days, because there are a lot of very powerful Hindu Indian diaspora people now in the Conservative Party. But all the parties have this, and it isn't just the Conservatives. So that is the dilemma you find in the UK. It's being fought out in the political parties, but for an easy life, they go down the route of it's a bilateral issue, so they don't have to take sides. And I'm afraid that has held things up. It was easier in Europe, but only while we were there, because the MEP groups, the British MEPs, were very strongly committed to resolving the Kashmir issue of all political parties. There was myself and Shafat Mohammed from the Lib Dems were very, very much involved in this, but as was Anthea McIntyre from the Conservatives, Richard Corbett from the Labour Party, and Scott Ainsley from the Greens. So we had a very broad coalition committed to dealing with the Kashmir crisis and bringing India to the table within the European Parliament. we have a similar grouping within the British Parliament, but it is more strongly countered by the India lobby, and I think that is creating the impasse.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a small break and get the questions from the audience. There's one question here for the Honorable Andleeb Abbas. They ask, what is Pakistan doing at the United Nations for the Kashmir issue? Is Pakistan willing to contact the members of the United Nations Human Rights Council? And I think they were asking if the next session begins on the 22nd. So I think they're asking if there's any action queued for that session on behalf of Pakistan.
So our focus has been, as far as, like we said, we are very clear that we are abiding by, and we want the United Nations to own up its own principle and let Kashmiris have that right of self-determination. So our efforts have been very heavily directed towards trying to gather support of the UN countries, and we were successful, as almost 3 meetings took place on specific Kashmir topic in the last 1.5 years, which had never taken place in the last 50 years. Also, if you have read, there's a statement of the United Nations president. He has very clearly said that Kashmir is an international issue. Kashmiris need a solution, and Pakistan and India must come on the table to bring this issue on the resolution path. As far as Pakistan is concerned, yes, there is a huge advantage, unfortunately, that India enjoys, and that is because it is a market of 1.4 billion people, and it is, investment-wise, a very attractive country. So a lot of times what is right is not, gets submerged under what is materially profitable.
Yeah.
And, when you talk about international institutions, you talk about parliaments, European Parliament, human rights, that's what we keep on saying, that, at the end of the day, if we have to have a call of conscience, but unfortunately, many times, the politics and economics are too heavy to be able to follow principles and follow the call of the conscious. But what we've done is that we have approached lobbies in various, sections of important parliaments. We have had contact groups, Kashmiri contact groups in UK. We have, senators coming along. We have taken them to the line of control. Recently, there was Indian violation of the line of control. They were firing on Pakistan, and United Nations cars were moving over there, and they were fired at all as well. So Pakistan has made a case of that and has filed to UN that their observers group was also under danger because India was violating the LOCs that they violated about 175 times. We've also had a dossier of India sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan, and with evidences being presented to the United Nations. And of course, we also have, the social media, voice being raised on it. But let me admit that the fact of the money and market might of India has been able to prevail on a lot of the good efforts that have been in place. But again, on a positive note, in the last 2 years, the way Pakistan has been now seen as a peace promoter in the region, and India has been seen as a disturbed nation, is almost the first time that it's happening.
Yes.
So we want to continue with our efforts in that direction.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
On the question of the market, I mean, I'm very curious. I mean, what do you think is the difference between China and India here? I mean, it seems like the world, especially the Western democracies, are willing to take on, it seems like, especially in the last few years, China, which is also a huge market, which is also a big player in the world economy. But it seems like there is no end to challenging, China's violations on human rights, China's, aggressive actions, say for instance in the Pacific, etc. However, what makes for Indian exceptionalism on this case? I mean, why should the market matter in India's case while it doesn't matter in China's case? They're open to anybody on the panel.
I think it matters in both cases. But I think that the situation in China at the moment, I think it has come to a head. I think that the level, what's happening in Xinjiang is now looking like almost a Holocaust. It's looking more and more and more like a genocide, a full-on. I mean, maybe they're not being killed as such, but the repression of the Uyghurs is alienating a lot of the world sentiment towards China, and even though, and this is something similar is happening with of course with Kashmir, with India, but to a far lesser degree. What is happening in Xinjiang is such a huge dimension, I think, that the world is starting to say, can we carry on feeding the Chinese economy, which uses its resources, in this way? Now, the encouraging thing here is that there is now a reaction that I think that quite rightly the reaction has been, in some respects, cautious and not wanting to create a new Cold War when we not very long got rid of the one with Russia. So I think that the democracies have been feeling their way as to how to counter China. As far as the European Union is concerned, it's extremely difficult because with the Germans, the economy trumps all, and so they're always reluctant to do anything which might harm the economy, and they're not particularly engaged on a global level in terms of things like human rights and basically foreign affairs and foreign policy, which is why I think it's a great shame that the UK is not still in the European Union, because I think we could give a real lead there. But what follows from what happens with China, I think, can, again, the same sentiment is starting to move on to India. And India has got away with it to a certain extent by being a democracy, but democracies can sometimes elect governments which are quite objectionable. And I think it is now permeating the world consciousness. So I think that the Western democracies are moving towards a mood where they're willing to take some financial pain or some economic pain to stand up for their values. We're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction. Of course, we've been beset by populist governments across the democratic world, and that has made it impossible to come together to counter these movements. And I very much put what's happening with India and what's happening in China in the same frame, even though China and India are always at each other's throats, if you like. I think that what is happening there comes from the same current of we can do what we like. We don't have to we don't have to bow to world opinion. We're too big, we're too powerful, and anyway, the world is so divided and in such a mess that they're not going to bother with what we do. We can do what we like. So there has been this current that I think we're fighting back against it. I think that those of us who believe in democracy and human rights are fighting back. And the start of that fight back, I think, was the American election result. But we have to use now all of these facets to take these despots on, whether they be despots like Xi Jinping or elected ones like Modi. But I think that the will of the world is actually starting to build, which is why what was said earlier about developing a movements for these human rights abuses are going to be very, very productive. And I think that we have to be very determined and we have to be driven, because we can't relax. This is these despotic regimes are a big threat to our way of life, and that's the way of life in Europe. It's also the way of life in Pakistan, because I do endorse what the last speaker said about the reversal of roles in sense. If you go back to the Kashmir issue, if you go back 10 years, very much the problem was seen to be the government of Pakistan. Now it's very much seen to be the government of India. The government of Pakistan is starting to look much more like a reliable international cooperator.
On that issue, let me get Ambassador Abdul Basit to jump in. And one of the participants has asked your assessment of Pakistan's diplomatic standing at the moment. How do you assess Pakistan? In one way, look at Pakistan as further and further getting isolated from the world, and its only friend and partner is China. Even the tensions recently against the Gulf states and other kinds of Muslim actors who have not stepped up on the Kashmir issue. But on the other hand, it seems like, as Dr. Bennion and Abbas have emphasized, that actually in comparison to India, Pakistan looks like a willing partner for peace in the region. So what's your assessment as a career diplomat of Pakistan's current standing, and where do you see it moving forward?
In respect to Kashmir, I think we have not been that successful, unfortunately, to garner support. India is no doubt enjoys a far more clout internationally because of it's a huge country, 500, 600 million people, middle class market. So there are serious differences. Pakistan, we have been trying whatever we could do to muster support on the international front, but let me confess that we have not been able to get government support. But on the non-government level, I think people around the world have been gradually realizing that there is an oppressed people in Kashmir, and they need to raise their voices. But it's a slow process. It will take some time. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we haven't given up. We will persevere in our efforts, in our commitment to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. But so far, whether it is the UN or OIC or other organizations, let me acknowledge that the governments have not been forthcoming in their support. That has kind of, caused disappointment in Pakistan. So that needs to be, we need to step up our efforts, double down our efforts, rather than to get frustrated because of these things.
Thank you very much. Ms. Abbas, I wanted to return to one of the things that you said about the changing of the status quo because of India's recent revoking of Article 370. And a lot of people don't understand the on-the-ground threat that poor and underprivileged people face when it comes to land grabbing. I mean, land grabbing in South Asian context, the way that people, for even those people who live abroad and investors who are foreign investors and also local people, how very powerful entities, both formal and informal, operate within the legal structures of South Asia, both in Pakistan, Bangladesh, India. I mean, land grabbing and how it works and how it's acutely a threat in the context of Kashmir if Article 370 is not put back into place. Could you please give some of our viewers a background on how threatening the situation now is as far as demographic changes is concerned, the balance of power, etc. in Kashmir? If you could shed some light on that, that would be helpful.
Well, as we know, the Kashmir had its own status, and so the Indians coming from India and from other countries were not allowed to. The first right was of land ownership; everything was with the Kashmiris. Now, the Indians, with the revocation of this 370, it has been allowed and set free that the Indians can come, they can own land, they can marry over there, they can have similar and more rights than the Kashmiris themselves, which makes the whole concept of occupation, a demographic occupation, very open. So what we saw was that as soon as 370 was abrogated, there was a complete joy expressed in India, because they felt that now they could go over there, rule over there, force in fact, it was so sad that they said, okay, now we'll have beautiful children because Kashmiri girls are very beautiful. We'll just marry, have children, and it'll be our generations, our way of living, our way of thinking, our religion, which will guide the future generations. And that is why this demographic encroachment is very dangerous, because it basically talks about what India has gone through in the mindset of Prime Minister Modi. It's no longer a secular, they don't follow secularism, which is basically that every religion and caste has a right. They are basically following the political philosophy of majoritarianism, that the largest number will exercise control over the smallest number. So Hindutva philosophy that they have is basically that only the Hindu nationals, it should be a Hindu nation. And Kashmir, if it has Muslims, will slowly, through the demographic occupation, become a Hindu state also. And finally, if a plebiscite takes place and a self-determination does take place, let's say after 10 years when India feels that now they have enough voting power over there, they will allow self-determination. And in the end, because they've imposed the Hindutva philosophy over there, the referendum might say that we want to stay with India, but that will not be the true reflection of the original Kashmiri choices.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Abdul, I want to ask one more question. It's a tough one, so bear with me. August 5th, 2009 is a turning point, obviously, in certain sense. And from a Turkish perspective, we might ask, has Pakistan missed the Cyprus moment, right? If there was a time when probably the world waited to see if Pakistan would do something. August 5th maybe would have been that day. I mean, because now the status quo on the ground has been shifted in a way that maybe if these demographic changes do take place, a referendum may become meaningless. So do you feel like there was a moment lost for Pakistani intervention in Kashmir, especially given the fact that now people are talking about potential genocide? I mean,
no, I don't think that Pakistan ever thought to settle this issue by waging another war with India. There is one view that Pakistan should have intervened, but obviously we always believed in diplomacy. And though even in 2014, when elections were being held in India, revocation of Article 370 was part of the BJP election manifesto. And we did have even then some idea as to how India would gradually move towards its revocation. And I have met many, then, during my stint in New Delhi, I have met people like, all the BJP leaders and indirectly warned them not to go down that route. But unfortunately, they did not heed our advice. On 5th of August itself, and before that, we had Pulwama, and we had seen how 40 CRPF people got killed. There was an action by indigenous Kashmiri, and then what happened on the 26th of February, and then how Pakistan responded to that. So there are inherent dangers to even think of even a limited war, because in a nuclear environment. So that is inherently very, very hazardous. So Pakistan never thought of resolving this issue militarily. We still strongly believe that it should be resolved through peaceful negotiations. But obviously, when the genocide continues and when people, continue to suffer at the hands of state terrorism, who knows? As I said, in my introductory remarks, India is not comprehending the gravity of the situation. You never know how the public opinion in Pakistan reacts in the final analysis. Things can escalate to a dangerous point. So that's why it is important for the international community as well to realize the significance and the importance of the situation and get itself involved. Otherwise, who knows? There is everyday ceasefire violations along the line of control. Things can escalate and beyond redemption, I would say. So that's why in Pakistan we always advise caution. We always look for possibilities of how to settle this issue peacefully. But unfortunately, India has been impervious so far to Pakistani overtures. And I hope that the point will come that India one day will realize that this is not the way it can settle or occupy the land indefinitely like this. Because, I have realized one thing while living in India, that no matter what India does in illegally occupied Kashmir, it can never win hearts and minds of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because every household has a martyred. Every household People have suffered so immensely that there is simply no possibility, no matter how much development takes place in occupied Kashmir, India will never be able to win their hearts and minds. And they will always resist the Indian occupation. And I'm sure whenever they get an opportunity, they will come out, they will continue with their resistance. And that is, I think, India realizes. Hence, it continues to increase its security forces in occupied Kashmir. And there is no respite as far as India is concerned. I'm sure that India would eventually, ultimately realize this blunder, this mistake it has made. Though at present it is kind of basking, in the hope that it will be able to consolidate through demographic changes and so on and so forth. But I'm sure when it comes to Valley and the Chenab region and Kargil itself, things will be very, very difficult for India. Jammu region, I can understand to a certain extent, which is Hindu majority area. But even in Jammu, the Chenab Valley, the Chenab region will be quite difficult for India. So I am not saying that it is though India has already issued a 3.4 million domiciles to Indians to settle down in Kashmir, but that would not be that easy for India. I mean, you will see very strong, fierce resistance on the part of people in Jammu and Kashmir whenever they get a chance to come out on the streets and and to protest and show their resistance. So India needs to introspect and reflect that these steps are not going to go down or be acceptable to the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of, we're moving towards the end. I mean, we started a little late, so I'm going to push some questions together. There were a few questions for Dr. Phillip. The first was that there was going to be a vote in the European Parliament. And however, it seems like due to pressure from India, that never took place. So how can a resolution be reintroduced in the European Parliament? That's number one question.
Well, I think they've put through. There will be some reintroductions, but the chances now of getting them through without the British contingent are lower. So the Kashmiri lobby really needs to get itself better organised in the European Parliament and find champions amongst non-British MEPs. This isn't impossible, but of course they had a large group of ready-made champions for the cause with the British contingent previously. And it was very, very clear that the India lobby knew that if they could get it beyond January last year, if they could put it off beyond January last year, and the ruse was that Modi was about to visit, and they didn't want to. They thought it was the wrong time to pass a resolution. Now this was pushed. This view was pushed from the EPP, the European People's Party, who are the biggest group in the European Parliament but don't have a majority, and they managed to water everything down that much and kick it into the long grass until after the Brits had left. So I'm afraid that resolution is a victim of Brexit, and like many other issues will be. So we now, of course, from my angle, we're powerless in this respect. But I have a lot of friends within the European Parliament. You'll probably know Ilhan Küçük, who's a very, very good close friend of mine, and he's still very much involved in human rights and foreign affairs. So I think try to use people like him to try and press the cause in the European Parliament in future. But it's going to be more difficult without us there.
Thank you. As you know, like one of the ways that this conflict gets mischaracterized, especially when it comes to Kashmir, is that it's only the current government, right, and the BJP and their Hindutva ideas that are creating a dangerous situation. However, if you look at the course of history in India, we notice that internal deployment of military, internal deployment of the Indian military domestically within India has been either in the Punjab against Sikh, against Naxalites, against people of Nagaland, or against Muslims. That doesn't fare very well for India's secular credentials, given that the Indian military deployed in India has never turned its resources against the majority, the Hindu majority. Therefore, the BJP, in a lot of ways, recent historical evidence shows that the BJP isn't such an anomaly towards Indian state policy as a whole. And in fact, there are other instances of the fact. Recent work by Arundhati Roy, for instance, has shown that since independence, most of the ruling elites in India has been a casteist Brahmin ruling elite in India, and therefore she characterizes the state as a
but there is a I've
ideological.
expressed the opinion at one point that the fact that the BJP has gone so far, it now defines very much anybody who's opposed to the BJP to take a much more inclusive position. And this is, I have contacts in India, and I'm finding them far more and these are Hindus being far more outspoken on Kashmir and other issues than they ever were before, simply now because they think the BJP have gone too far. So I think there is a chance now it could be part of the program of opposition to be far more inclusive and to take a different approach to Kashmir, simply because the BJP have taken such a radical position. It does actually make that alternative position easier to take for any opposition. And of course, the BJP will not remain in power forever. It doesn't look like they're going to be moved particularly quickly, but we have to also encourage the opposition in India to take these more amenable positions.
Thank you. I think that unfortunately we've come to the end of our talk. I just want to give the floor to each person to give their concluding and closing remarks. We'll begin with you, Mrs. Andleeb Abbas. You could just summarize what you think is the way forward, or what you think is something we need to take away from our discussion.
So thank you very much. I think this has been a very fruitful discussion, and the August panel has given some very good insights. I think one takeaway is basically that though India has imposed severe and relentless clampdowns and oppression on Kashmir, it still has given an opportunity for those who want the Kashmiri voice to be heard, to take this going beyond, the necessary steps by India. By going too far, India has itself become a center of attention for the world, even if they don't want to pay attention to that part of India. So with Pakistan and all the other countries who want Kashmiri voices to be heard, this particular opportunity should be capitalized upon through, talking to the European Parliament, talking to other stakeholders, and spreading it through the media. Number two, the takeaway is that, like we all said, that it's a social media world where activists, celebrities, and even non-traditional voices are ready to raise this aspect. And maybe we need to also look at the non-traditional ways of involving such voices to make it more of a universal cause than just a regional cause. And lastly, I think the most important thing is that the people of Kashmir must feel that their cause is a worthy cause for them to continue the struggle, and there are enough support systems, especially from Pakistan and its allies, to help them also indigenously resist and continue the struggle despite all the oppression. I thank you for inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to learn from everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbas. Ambassador Abdul Basit, one of the questions that I missed, and maybe you can include these in your concluding remarks, is, we're sitting in Istanbul, in Turkey. What does Pakistan and expect? I mean, from their brotherly countries in the Kashmiri conflict? What would be, in your view, the most helpful thing for the Kashmiri people, for people in Turkey and other Muslim countries? What could be done?
I think we are very grateful to Turkish government and to the people of Turkey for their consistent support on the Kashmir issue. And people of Pakistan and the people of Jammu and Kashmir are I think, appreciate the fact that Turkey has been in the forefront when it comes to the Islamic world. Though other OIC countries have not been that vocal, unfortunately, but we hope that Turkey will continue using its own influence in order to garner more and more support for Kashmiris. Turkey does have clout around the world, Europe and beyond. So we expect our Turkish brothers, whether they are in the government or in their private capacity, to continue promoting the Kashmir cause. And I'm sure that we gradually, we will see its positive results. It's a long haul. We should not be, because sometimes freedom struggles take 50 years. Other struggles may take 200 years. Who knows? But we should never give up. This is what I would underline, that freedom struggles take their time. They never move in a linear form, linear shape. There are ups and downs, but we should never give up. And this is, I think, what the people of Jammu and Kashmir are resolved to do. And we appreciate people like Mr. Bennion, who have been staunch supporters of resolving the Kashmir dispute. And we appreciate his efforts as well. Now, obviously, after the Brexit, we would expect Britain in particular, because it is the legacy, this Kashmir dispute is the legacy of the partition of the subcontinent. So we expect the United Kingdom in particular to play a more active role in resolving this long-standing issue. Thank you very much once again, and it was a pleasure, particularly listening to Mr. Bennion and his insights, and I'm really personally very grateful to him for all his endeavors in the cause of Kashmir.
Thank you very much. And Professor, Dr. Professor Bennion, your closing remarks.
Yeah, I want to thank the other two speakers who have, of course, or three speakers who, of course, have got far more real knowledge of the situation, and certainly the insights of a career diplomat, because this is it's very useful for people like me to actually talk to people who have real knowledge of the situations, because we are we tend to be theorists, and but my hope and and it is a real hope that is that the democracies of the world, and particularly the democracies of the rich world, have more of a stomach now for taking on despotic regimes, whether they be from in China or whether they be in a democracy like India. I believe that there is more of an appetite than there has been for a very long time. I think that there has been a complacency has set in, and a materialism which is starting to actually undermine liberal democracy worldwide. And I believe that there has been a wake up, and it's only this is nascent. It's right at the beginning of this wake up, but I'm hoping that and I actually believe this is happening. That this wake up call now will bring the democracies together, and they will be more willing to make some sacrifices themselves to try and see justice in other parts of the world. Now, the fear I have is that will be so focused on China, particularly because of the Uyghur situation, but also what we're seeing with Hong Kong, threats with the South China Sea, threats to Taiwan, that India might be adopted into this grouping without too many questions. Rather like we saw the Americans take on some very unpleasant regimes, particularly in their own backyard in South America in the 60s and 70s. We could see India adopted into this process without any questions, and I'm afraid that would be very, very bad news for the people of Kashmir. Now, the opportunity is now to try and ensure that the Americans do not go down that route. But the opportunity is now, and the window is very, very short. So we have to make sure that the Americans are well briefed, and I believe they're in a mindset to be well briefed. They've got a vice president who has knowledge of the situation. So the work that is done now by the Kashmir and the Pakistan diplomats on the new American government is absolutely vital to this process. But if that can be done successfully, I am optimistic that at least we can be on the right path, and that the world is turning round, that it is defeating populism, and because it is populism that is driving Modi and his modus operandum in Kashmir. It is again majoritarian, as has been pointed out, but we also have to engage the opposition forces in India to come over to our way of thinking, because they're showing signs of being reasonable. So I'm optimistic, but that optimism is guarded. So let's hope. But we're not going to actually make the progress we want without hard work, without effective lobbying, and without working together with a unified message.
Thank you very much. Before we close, and I want to introduce for our closing remarks and questions and comments our director, Dr. Sami Al-Arian, who has been gracious enough to invite all of our speakers, and also who has been listening very patiently on the side, as he does often in most of our events. I'm sure he has some insights and comments that he would like to make. So the floor is yours, Dr. Sami.
Thank you very much, Awais, and thank you for our panelists from Pakistan and Britain. This has been very great, fruitful, and informative panel. The ideas expressed are very relevant, and I find them thought-provoking. From my standpoint, the struggle in Kashmir is not about human rights violations only, or border dispute, or a diplomatic snafu, or a simple geopolitical game. To me, it's a national liberation struggle that involves millions of people. And for that, we need a national liberation project that is people-based. We need a people-based approach. That means we have to build a worldwide solidarity movement. I think much of the discussion involving Kashmir that I have heard in many panels, many conferences, they tend to concentrate more on the diplomatic approaches, on state-to-state relationship, on UN resolutions, and so on and so forth. And very rarely do they touch upon what the people need to do. We need a non-violent resistance movement in that spirit, because we are faced, whether we like it or not, but this is particularly obvious and clear, that we are dealing with a colonialist settler project in Kashmir today. It may not have been the case, even though many people were talking about it, when you have hundreds of thousands of people, of soldiers occupying the territory, but now it's pretty clear. After the disengagement, after the allowing the Indians to go to Kashmir and settle, that's what we're faced with. They need to change the demography of Kashmir. And for that, we do need a resistance movement, a non-violent resistance movement, a people-based solidarity movement. It's a global project that I think must be centered on the Muslim world. There is a lot of relationship between the Muslim world and India. Millions of Indians are expatriates in many of these countries. That tool has to be utilized. I'm not discounting other countries, but I don't think talking about what the Americans would do, what the Europeans would do, what the Chinese would do, these are important world powers, would liberate Kashmiris. Unfortunately, there has to be lots and lots and lots of pressure applied on the government of India and beyond. You need to utilize all means and tactics to apply all the pressure on these governments, particularly, obviously, the current government. It's a racist government, no doubt. This prime minister at one point was excluded from going to the United States because of his racist and rhetoric and policies. So to have a movement for the struggle for freedom and justice, that's what we're talking about. This is about self-determination that needs a national struggle. India, whether we like it or not, is an occupying power. And that occupation must pay a cost. It cannot be, no occupation will just simply leave, especially with a rooted one for decades taking place. That means to build such a movement, we're talking about a BDS movement for Kashmir, a movement against the occupation. We need a lot of education. We need a lot of people across the world, particularly even in the Muslim world. They don't know much about Kashmir. They hear the country, the name, here and there, but there isn't really much that they know about it. We at the center, we try to focus on talking about, but this is mostly the elites and intellectuals and academics and students. We need to go beyond that. We need to go to the grassroots. We need to go to the actual people and tell them what the Kashmiri people are suffering from. When you compare the struggle in Kashmir and the struggle in Palestine, there are a lot of similarities there. Palestine is truly a global issue where many people, obviously for different reasons, but still, I think the similarities here should tell us that we must also have an education campaign across the globe about the Kashmiri struggle, as well as a world solidarity movement. And to do that, I would like also to point out, I think one of the participants here, one of the panelists talking about that we need to utilize also the opposition within India. I think was Dr. Bennion. I think this is a very important tool that must be also utilized. We cannot discount the fact that out of 1.4 billion people living in a country, that all of them agree on such genocidal policies. I think we had over 400 million Muslims there, that they could be lifted and empowered and be part of that struggle. You have a lot of people who are secular, who are liberal, who are progressive, who are democratic within India, who reject such racist apartheid mentality taking place today in the political in Indian politics. So there is a lot to be said. There's a lot to be done, and I think if I make any contribution, it is this, that we need to have a people-based approach in addition to the other approaches that have been mentioned today. And again, thank you very much for your participation, and thank you for being part of this great event. Thank you very much, Awais.
Thank you again for all of our participants. I want to especially thank all of the people who are listening on our Facebook Live and also on the chat who joined the group. If there's any responses to what Dr. Sami said, feel free to say something. I'm going to close the session. If there isn't anything, I will remind everybody, stay tuned for our next webinar series in March. The date will be announced very soon. Once again, from Istanbul, from the Center of Islam and Global Affairs, warm and you have a warm welcome here anytime you come, and we're honored that you were able to join us, Abdul, Abbas, Ambassador Abdul Basit, and Dr. Phillip Bennion. And also I want to mention, even though he's not here, the gracious participation of the President of Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Sardar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.